so quiet. It just seems quiet. All right, let's see. All right. Getting things started here.
Hey, Jason.
Yeah.
Rub a little cloth across your lens. I think you're got a little foggy.
Does look a little foggy.
There we go.
Totally better.
Better? Hey, all right.
Yeah.
100%.
Good deal. This is interesting. So it's interesting, like how it lines up with the Buddha. Like it looks like I have like the Buddha's head. If I see come right,
That is, you're wearing his hat. Yeah.
wearing the Buddha's
Yeah.
internal flame. All right. Okay. let's get things started. No, we actually have a few minutes. We have a few minutes. All right. Talk amongst yourselves. People are coming in. Perhaps take a minute, maybe say hi to someone that is around you that you haven't met or you don't know. Just take a minute, say hi to someone that you don't know. You guys can just hang tight.
No way. I'm saying hi to somebody I don't know too. Hi,
You got-
Pamela.
You guys can say hi, but know that we are recording live, although I will
Okay.
edit all this stuff out.
Hi, my name's
Just being rebellious.
my name's Pam, and I am coming in from the south of France.
Hey, good to meet you.
We doing Zoom introductions?
No, we're not. I'm just being a shit disturber for Jason. My bad.
No, feel free. You guys say hi to each other. Just know that it's being recorded and could end up on YouTube.
Good to know my name won't end up there.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
All right. $7:30 Monday night. Welcome to Against the Stream. Those of you that don't know me, my name is Jason Murphy, and I generally teach here on Wednesday nights. Well, almost always, except for when someone else teaches for me, which is kind of what I'm doing tonight. Noah is on retreat in New Mexico, so I have the honor, privilege, responsibility to keep this group going, which I'm always happy to do. Nice to meet those of you online. Welcome. And those of you in the room. Yeah, I've been, with Against the Stream for a number of years, since before there wasn't Against the Stream. Me and Noah have been friends since 1988, which means we're old as fuck, but still kicking. And we've both been on the Dharma and recovery path together for many, many years. He's my teacher, one of my best friends, my colleague, the guy that my road dog. We did time together. We got a sordid and long history. And we've also been on this road together of meditation and recovery and exploration of heart and mind for the benefit of freeing our own hearts and minds. And then in this role of helping others to do the same. And so that's why I'm here today, this evening. Yeah, is there anyone that's here for the first time? Anyone either in the room or on Zoom that wishes to just kind of introduce yourself? Just unmute if you're on Zoom.
Pam, first time.
Great, where are you from?
It's the south of France, Aix-en-Provence.
Wonderful, thanks for joining us. It must be tomorrow over there, huh? Yeah, it's tomorrow morning. Something like that. Anyone in the room? Okay. Your name is what? Noor. Yeah, nice to meet you. And your name? Kat. Welcome back, Kat. Glad you're here. All right. So how many people were here last week? Great. Great. So one of my kind of topics that I want to bring up is really kind of an extension of, I was here last Monday when Noah was teaching, and I thought it was an excellent talk. And I'm going to kind of expound on some of the teachings that Noah gave last week, going to some texts, going to some teachings from the Buddha and others in regards to the mind, this thing that we love and we hate, right? It's the vehicle to keep us suffering or to free us from suffering is right here. It's right here. In Buddhist text in Pali, the word is chitta. Chitta means heart mind. Because really in the Buddhist kind of understanding, there isn't a separation between what we call the heart, not the anatomical heart, but the emotional seat and the mind. It's actually considered the emotional seat of the mind. And it can be found, throughout. Yet we tend to kind of separate things as this is the mind, the brain, and this is the emotional center or the, heart. Right. So I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about some of those things tonight. But first, we're gonna meditate. We're gonna sit in practice. Is there anyone new to practice that hasn't really meditated or benefited from meditation instruction? Yeah, great. That's great. Okay, well, I'm going to give a couple sets of instructions. These are what I find the instructions that have worked best for me, and anything that I teach is either something that I practice and I have learned and have integrated into my own kind of way of understanding the Dharma, meaning the teachings of the Buddha, or have the instructions or the teachings that are passed down from generation to generation for about 2,600 years. Yeah. So just finding a posture, we're just going to start with some meditation, finding a posture that's workable, that's sustainable. And I'm going to give two sets of instructions. And the first set is about arriving here. It's about establishing mindfulness, about bringing the attention out of the external kind of busyness of the day and into the internal experience here and now. So we'll be collecting the attention. All right, so it's helpful to allow the eyes to close. It's not necessary to close the eyes. It's not required, but it is helpful, especially if you want that introspective lens, allowing the eyes to close. If you don't feel comfortable with the eyes closed, you can just allow them to be downcast, kind of right in front of you, picking a spot to focus the attention on. And just arriving here. And sometimes it's even helpful just to say the word here silently a few times to yourself. Opening to the comings and goings of sound. Sounds outside the room. sounds inside the room. And so the invitation is to take a few deeper breaths. Just kind of give attention to where you notice or recognize the breath. Tip of the nose, rise and fall of the belly, expansion and contraction of the chest. Any of these points are fine. They all can work to connect with this experience of breathing. And then much like you would with a flashlight or like a laser pointer, aiming the attention or focusing your awareness towards that point of contact. Now, we're not trying to do anything special with the breath. It's just a point of present time experience that we can rest the attention. So these first few moments, aim, connect, and then sustain that awareness of connection to the experience of breathing for as long as you can. Of course, knowing that the attention will wander off and that it's not a problem. That's just what the mind does and has been doing since you woke up and all day. Thinking, planning, seeing, hearing, doing. The purpose here is to recognize when the attention wanders off and then focus and refocus, shining the light of awareness or attention back onto this point of contact. Again and again, and as relaxed and non-judgmentally as possible. Breathing in, know that you're breathing in. Breathing out, know that you're breathing out. aim, connect, and sustain. Again and again. Establishing and re-establishing mindfulness of this present time experience. Breath, body, sound, thoughts, all happening. Yet the invitation is to establish and re-establish this light of awareness towards this experience of breathing where we've first made contact. With as much friendliness and kindness as possible. again and again. Just recognizing if the attention wanders off. And with a sense of friendliness or kindness with the mind, aiming the attention back, reconnecting with that point of contact, the anchor of attention, and then sustain that attention, that contact for as long as possible. Again and again. Establishing and re-establishing here. If the mind feels extra busy or the body exceptionally restless, the invitation and the instruction is to bring the attention specifically to the out breath, the exhale. Really narrow your awareness to the experience of the exhale. The inhale kind of breathes itself. Again, not trying to force the breath or hold the breath. Just bringing kind of an extra attention to the experience of the exhale. Once we have collected the attention, we're really settled in, can begin to broaden the awareness. Of course, this is a choice. We open to a new set of instructions. Relax. Just noticing if there's any tension in the body. Can we soften? Soften into the exhale. As we relax into the breath, observe. Begin to observe the sense doors, even observing the thinking mind that's still kind of happening in the background, hopefully. And then allowing. Can allow whatever's arising. Thoughts, feelings, sensations, sounds, smells. Whatever's here can be here. We don't need to shut it out. Relax. Observe. Allow. Each breath. Each moment. Still with that sense of friendliness and kindness with the mind. And that spotlight on the place of contact, often known as the anchor. The breath as the meditation object to return to. Relaxed, observational, allowance. Relax. Observe. Allow. Each moment. Each breath. In these last few moments, letting go of any instruction, letting go of any kind of focused attention, and just be. Just being here, this sitting, breathing body, just as it is. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, no one to be. Feel free to move about the cabin. Seatbelt sign is off. So before I kind of jump into the topic, I'll just create a little space for any questions you might have about the instructions, about meditation, Buddhism in general. You can raise the hand in the reactions online or your actual hand here in the room. All right. Well, I'll open up, we'll see what happens at the end, but I'll open up at the end for some questions if you have any. But that's fine. I have plenty to talk about. And the name of this talk is Que Onda, which my understanding of translation is what's happening. What's happening here? What's happening now? And so I'm going to give a little bit of a breakdown of what I think is happening. And this is from the Buddhist lens of the third foundation of understanding the mind. But really, one of the things to think about is, this is a warrior practice. This is a difficult practice. If it wasn't difficult, it wouldn't be worthwhile. We have so many things that we can do throughout our day, throughout our life, where we're just kind of cruising. You noticed? And we tend to seek things that are, not that challenging. The mind, path of least resistance. To actually change the experience that we have of our hearts and minds or our lives in the external world means that we have to struggle a bit. And this is like what the Buddha talked about. This is the Buddha's experience and the Buddha's story. And the Buddha's story isn't just like Siddhartha Gautama 2,568 years ago. Isn't just about him. It's actually an archetypal story, which is why I love it so much. It's a hero's journey. And really, we're all in this journey. We're all struggling with our own path of awakening. How can you see your own struggle or your own journey or your own healing within the story? That's kind of the hope. I think that's kind of the point. So what is a hero's journey? What is this archetypal story? All the great movies follow this track, by the way. There's a calling. There's a departure. There's a struggle. There's an awakening, and there's a return. And if you think of the arc of the Buddhist story, and then even the arc, I don't know if those of you who have been on retreat, how many people have been on a meditation retreat? Yeah, and those of you online, yeah. So there's an arc. There's a calling. And like, what was your calling? What called you to practice? Probably suffering. That's usually the case, right? Some kind of mental anguish or just, fuck, it's so difficult. So there's some calling to practice. We all have it. The Buddha had it. The Buddha to be. Some of my struggles were, 16 years old, struggling with addiction, with, whatever, just all kinds of stuff, violence, difficulty, being arrested. It was just so many things already. By the time I was 16, I was pretty much on my way to prison. I'd already been locked up several times. And I was really, until this time of beginning discovering kind of meditation practice, I didn't know anything about Buddhism for years and years, but I did learn to meditate. I had a psychologist who came to my school. I went to a continuation school. I've been kicked out of every other school in the, that story. And I had this psychologist who came, and he was just kind of cool, like weird and older dude, 70s throwback. And he taught meditation to a bunch of crazy punk rock delinquents. And something about it just clicked. Something about it was helpful. And until that time, all that I had tried to do was seek pleasure and avoid pain. That was all that I did. Seek pleasure in whatever form I could find and avoid pain because it felt like it was going to kill me. And it almost did a few times. So part of my calling was that aspect of, and actually finding that meditation gave me a bit of a respite from that juxtaposition of those two, seeking pleasure, which what does seeking pleasure do? But continue the cycle of pain. Have you found that to be true? Right? That which we avoid persists. That which we resist persists. So avoiding painful feelings, I was trying to check out of whatever was happening in my life. And there was a lot happening. And, this was a survival strategy. And it worked for a time. But then it left me feeling dissatisfied with life. Hence the calling. So finding a little bit of a respite. And for a while, drugs and alcohol did that too. They gave me that respite. They gave me that, but it was caught in that cycle of craving and avoiding. And meditation, maybe you experienced this just in this last half an hour or so. Meditation gave me this kind of here. Oh, this is okay. I can actually be here in this breath, right in this moment. Nothing else, everything else can kind of fall away, right? So freedom, is seen clearly. This freedom from suffering is seen clearly. And the Buddha talked about the development of mindfulness. And he said, it's better to have lived a single day seeing the rapid rising and passing away of all things than to live 100 years not seeing. It's better to live a single day seeing the rapid arising and passing away of all things, the way things are, than to live 100 years sleepwalking, constantly seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, seeking pleasure, avoiding pain. So how's that going? It's not easy. I had a teacher on a retreat once just kind of come out and say, have you figured it out yet? I was like, absolutely not. I figured out that I'm fucking crazy. That's what I figured out. My mind is out of control. He was like, have you figured it out yet? We're not our thoughts. We're not our emotions. This is part of the problem. We think we are. We get locked into these, these beliefs, these ideas. The Buddha called it the magic show. The Buddha called the way in which we believe our minds is like being engrossed in a magic show. I always found that to be interesting, right? The mental and emotional content arising and passing away. The 8 worldly winds, sometimes it's discussed. Just whatever the feelings are, whatever the thoughts are, just becoming our reality. and we just get whisked away. Did that happen during this last half an hour for any of you? Yeah, of course it did. You're lying if you didn't, or you were sleeping. Because it happens to all of us. I've been meditating for 35 years. It still happens. Been a monk, sat long ass retreats, still happens. It happens less than it used to, which is good. There's the good news, right? So there are several things happening right now and throughout the day from moment to moment. But really, we can just kind of break them down into a few things. There's what's happening. There's what's happening about what's happening. There's what's not actually happening. And then there's what's happening about what's not actually happening. So what does this mean? How do we break this down? This is, I think, ultimately what the practice that I was teaching, or I was kind of supporting us in, the what's happening, sense contact, feeling tones, which leads to perception, which leads to mental fabrication. That's really all that's happening. Everything else is make-believe. There's what's happening. Sense contact. 6 sense doors contact. The mind is the 6th sense in the Buddhist psychological understanding, which then leads to feeling tones. There's also, actually, it's really the same. It's to feel and to know is the translation of the word Vedana, which means feeling tone. So there's sense contact, there's feeling tone, to feel and to know, which we usually miss completely because it's happening so quickly and we're so desensitized to it, which is one of the beauties of mindfulness. Mindfulness allows us to feel and be more and more grounded into, oh, this is what's happening here. Oh, this is the feeling that's arising. It's arising, it's staying for a time. It's not me, it's just what's happening. Which leads to perception. What I like to call the perceptual database, because most of our perceptions are not actually what we're experiencing. They're what we did experience and how we're imputing that mentally onto what's happening now. And it seems weird, but this is what we're doing all day long. We're just kind of, flashing on the screen of our here and now past perceptions. And this is what's creating mental fabrications, right? Creating these stories that we have. So what's happening about what's happening? Well, all the thoughts, emotions that arise based on this present time experience. And you might have noticed that in that last 30-minute meditation. You'd be lost on some story, totally not happening. Future or past. So are we getting this? There's what's happening about what's happening. This is what the Buddha is talking about, understanding the mind, seeing the process unfold. That's the beauty of this present time experience, this meditative experience, which Noah talks about it all the time, but there's only like 10% of all the Buddhists in the world that meditate, that actually do what we were just doing. Not to say that the others don't know some things, they do. Studying the scripture, studying the practice, doing certain rituals. But the prescription that the Buddha gave is see what's happening in your present time experience. And then that simple instruction, relax, observe, allow. Become non-reactive. And then learn to respond. One of the ways to kind of think about this is reactivity is suffering. On the most recent retreat I was on, I was just really recognizing that for myself. Oh, wow. Every time that I have a reactive state, there's some kind of clinging to something, there's suffering is taking place. And the relax, observe, and allow. And then there's freedom. It just eases up. It's that easy, kind of like what I said in the beginning. You know, this mind, right? Our worst enemy or our best friend. But we get to decide. But we have to learn some discernment. We have to learn how to train the puppy mind, you know. So then there's what's not actually happening, right? The stories, the hurts, the mistreatments, the fantasies, sometimes called proliferation of thought. The Buddha, Noah was talking about this last week, where he gave that example of how he actually was talking about, like, he saw me, and then the way that I like led to a different thought that he had, and then about going to some meeting, and then he was just off in some story. And this is the beauty of continued and sustainable practice, is we can begin to see that process. And then just recognize, oh, it's just a magic show, and let it go. Poof. Here, now. And as often as we can do that, and we begin to build a resilience to this tendency, this habit of mind, and this strengthens our resolve, it allows more peace and ease to be experienced in the here and now. And less of this kind of story making. It's worse than just story making, because we believe them and we become them. Have you realized that? I'm sure you have. This is one of the things that sucks about this whole experience. You can know that it's a story and still be totally identified with it as me and mine, even though it's a fabrication in your mind. But this happened. It did. But is it happening now? Or am I projecting, recreating these old stories, these old hurts? I did this for years and years. I'd be lying if I said I didn't do it sometimes now. Of course I do. But that moment of like seeing, oh yeah, this is just a story, and then letting it go. This is the practice, So for some of us, even just this, what's happening about what's not actually happening. This is, again, kind of getting caught in that story. Feelings-based thoughts, past, which create emotion, and we cling to, which is suffering. This mind is flighty. It's out of control and often highly inappropriate. Have you noticed? You're just sitting there breathing, meditating, or enjoying your day, and then some fucking crazy ass thought just comes in. You should really suffer about this right now. Remember that thing that happened when you were 12? You should fucking think about that right now. What's happening about what's not actually happening. So as long as we're constantly looking for, this is a paraphrase of the Buddhist teaching. As long as we're constantly looking for a resting place, we won't find it. As long as that's what this kind of constantly seeking pleasurable, I just need to be okay. What if I'm here to tell you it's never going to be okay? It's never going to be just right. This is, to me, what feeds addiction. Always searching for the eternal buzz, just right. Remember that? Some of you might know it. Some of you might be still seeking it. It's okay. For me, I could never find it. It was always overshot or undershot, right? Never just right. The teaching of the dissatisfaction of the way things are, or the dissatisfaction of the way things aren't. So we get caught in this. So in mindfulness, we're not trying to stop our minds from thinking. nor are we trying to engage it as an enemy. I think that this is something that people get really confused about. You know, we're not trying to stop our thoughts. And we're not trying to kill our thoughts. You know, instead, we're trying to befriend our thoughts and overcome our preoccupation with them. And that's basically what this kind of, the whole instruction of recognize where the attention goes, and then with a sense of friendliness and kindness with the mind. Yeah, the mind's just doing whatever the fuck it's been doing all day that you haven't been paying attention. And now it's like, oh, okay, well, let's sit for 20 minutes, whether it's in the morning or you come to this group or you do some online thing or, whatever. There's some interesting things that I've been finding recently as I've been reading more and more kind of studies on the mindfulness and neuroscience found around meditation, is that sometimes when we're so internally preoccupied that doing what we did tonight, closing the eyes, focusing on the breath, can be too much. And we actually need to do an external practice. What is an external practice? Well, it could be walking practice. Sometimes it could just be focusing on the body, the sensations versus the breath, and the breath can be too passive, or like sitting at the beach or on the coast and just watching the horizon, or just looking at the sky. Like these are externally focused meditations. Not just letting our thoughts run away with us. We're still doing some intention in breathing and being present, but there's an external focus instead of that internal focus. I'm just saying, for some people, they find this to be too difficult. And it can be at first. Partially because we're so addicted to thinking. We're addicted to thinking. We're so addicted to thinking that we think about thinking. We think about thinking about thinking, right? This is what they call philosophy, which I studied, philosophy of mind, which was just a clusterfuck of ideas, but led me ultimately to Eastern philosophy, which then led me to really understanding more and more about Buddhism and then Buddhist psychology. So mindfulness is this clear awareness that we are thinking. So we're focused on whatever the experience is, and then it's a clear awareness that we are thinking. Meditation is a fierce practice, and that it reveals the reality of our everyday mind. And that's why in the beginning here, I gave that kind of aim, connect, sustain. Because oftentimes when you come in, you've been driving, you're looking for parking, maybe you're hungry, maybe you already ate, maybe you had a long day, maybe you got in a fight with your partner, maybe you had a text battle with someone, you got in an Instagram, I don't know, whatever the fuck people do now, right? The wars that happen. I remember in Facebook, when I don't use Facebook anymore, but I remember the Facebook wars and just how much some of that would just like affect me. For hours. I'd like come to this meditation group and I try to meditate and I'd be like, that fucking fucker. Joe Schmo 27 and their Twitter comment. What's happening about what's not actually happening. Suffering. I'm not pointing at fingers, right? Obviously, this is something that we do. We have more to contend with. What's funny is that, 2,668 years ago, when the Buddha was alive and teaching and walking around, he was like, this is the time that is, it's so difficult. It's so, challenging. There's so much greed, so much hatred, so much delusion. Now here we are, right? Maybe if there was Twitter or Facebook, maybe the Buddha wouldn't have gotten enlightened. You never know. Our internal life is, constantly preoccupied with the voices of, I like this or I don't like that. She hurt me. How can I get that? More of this, more of that. Find pleasure and comfort, and possibly avoid discomfort or unpleasant thoughts or emotions. This is just this process. It's just unfolding. And what I love about this whole context is none of this is your fault. It's not our fault. We were born with these big fucking brains that have the ability to review itself. Worst enemy, best friend, because also we have the ability to have that introspective, seeing thoughts as not me, as not mine, as just a process. There's this quote I like to use. So Zen saying, stop thinking and talking, and there's nothing that you can't know. Stop thinking and talking, and there's nothing that you can't know. What I love about this is it points to that we have the wisdom here. Dharma, enlightenment is not outside. I know we know this, right? Actually, I think that like the general Western understanding of nirvana was that it was some heavenly experience outside of ourselves for a while. Definitely when Kurt Cobain was around.
Yeah.
There was some, I think he thought it was maybe drugs. I don't know. But the stop thinking and talking, and there's nothing you can't know, just leads us again and again to, can we move? Can we clear out all of the shit that's not actually happening and just be with what is happening here, internally and externally, connecting. This is, the moral inventory machine of the mind, just playing itself out. Remember this, remember that. Don't forget this, don't forget that. What they did, what you did, what they're gonna do, what you want to do. It's not our fault. Our habits of mind kind of color our view of the world, right? So if we see the world as unsafe, then we're guarded or aversive. If we see the world as dangerous, we, better be careful, start prepping. I think we all kind of got a dose of that. 2020, remember? All of a sudden, like, anyone that wasn't wearing a mask was unsafe, or anyone that got closer than 6 feet. I mean, some people really took it to extreme. Right? It was a strategy to feel safe. One of the things about Buddhism that I've always appreciated is most of the kind of teacher's role is to help people feel safe in their own experience, safe. Hopefully, if you can feel safe in your own mind, because sometimes we talk about how it's like, it's a bad neighborhood and we don't want to go in alone, right? No, it talks about that sometimes. But we want to, upgrade the neighborhood. Any thoughts, reflections, questions at this point? Yeah.
The question I have is with the Buddhist perspective that we have loving kindness towards every being.
Mm-hmm.
This is slightly off topic. I have struggled with working towards through my aversion to certain people.
Mm-hmm.
In my case, it's exes.
Mm-hmm.
So what practices do you suggest for that?
Yeah, that's the one.
loving kindness.
May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be free from suffering, you fucking bitch. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be free from suffering. Even though I don't believe it right now. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be free from suffering. Just back and forth, repeating it, allowing, and then the anger is going to come up, and the old story, the what's not actually happening, the hurts, the mistreatments, the stories. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be free from suffering. May you be happy. Over there on the other side of the world, not near me, whatever it is, right? Whatever the story is. And then eventually the kind of extra commentary will die down. But yeah, that is the way to do it. Mhm.
Thank you.
Super important. Yeah. And to blend this kind of, seeing this is a story. It's not actually happening now, but we're getting caught in regret, in remorse, in why did I ever, or they shoulda, or they could, why did not, we get caught in this, and it's just story after story after story of what's not actually happening. Especially if we're no longer with them, It's different, I guess, if you're living with them and you have to go home to your partner that's like doing the same thing over and over again. It's still loving kindness. Yeah. That's still the Buddhist answer. That's really the psychological answer. Also, boundaries, being assertive, saying what what you'd like to see change, maybe couples therapy, there's other avenues. I had it's a part of the Bodhisattva vow, and it goes like this: if there's something that can be done about a situation, why be upset? If there's nothing that can be done about a situation, why be upset? If there's something that can be done about a situation, why have anxiety? Do the next right thing. Do what needs to be done. If there's nothing that can be done about a situation, why have anxiety about it? Why live in anger or regret? Or, add whatever it is. I'll tell you why. Because what we do is we continue to play these cycles of what's familiar, what's predictable, what feels safe, and what's painful. Familiar, predictable, safe, and painful. Over and over and over again. This is why meditation is difficult. Right? There's some deeper psychological kind of underpinnings about why it is that we continue to do that I'm not going to necessarily get into right now. But from the Buddhist perspective, when we can begin to see this, then we can interrupt it. And this is what the mindfulness practice is all about. This focusing and refocusing is teaching the brain to stop replaying, rehearsing, and to just be present here. And if here is unpleasant in some way, then we actually have to, there's a couple options we have. We can leave the situation. Let's say you're, confronted with something that's happening or whatever. We can attend to what's happening. We can do something about what's happening. And that might mean having a communication. That might mean distancing yourself. That might mean finding some safety. But if we address what's happening in the here and now, then we don't have to carry it with us. So what do we do to kind of save this process, right? To do things that are new, that aren't familiar, for a little bit unfamiliar, that are a little bit unknown, that are a little scary. And then learn to respond versus react. Any other kind of thoughts, questions? I don't see any hands up over there. Please.
Would it be accurate to say that, so it's what's happening about what's happening, what's not happening, and what's happening about what's not happening?
Mhm.
Would it be accurate to say that what's happening about what's happening would be like an emotion, and then what's happening about what's not happening would be a story? Is that accurate?
Yeah. So basically the idea of like what's happening is our sense pleasure, or sense spheres, or sense experiences, 6 sense experiences, and then the body or the mind and emotional kind of interaction of what's happening. And that's, so it's kind of level 1, level 2, right? And that's really all that we have any kind of, or volition over, to use the Buddhist term, right? We have some volition over that. And so anything that's happening beyond that is mental fabrication. Yeah. Which if we don't recognize it, we just get caught in over and over and over. And this is why, in every Buddhist teaching, it's like we cause our own suffering. Did you know that? You cause your own suffering? God, it's such a bummer. I have to take personal responsibility for that. I caused my own suffering. Now, this doesn't mean that I caused my pain. Certain experiences that happen externally were painful. Painful as a child, painful yesterday, painful in the breakup, painful when the boss, whatever, yelled at me, painful when the teacher said you're stupid, whatever the situation is, painful. Reliving it and living from it is suffering. And that is our choice. One of the other things I love about Buddhism. Buddhism takes the denial of blame out and says we have to take personal responsibility for what we can, for continuing to cause suffering for ourselves. And in some ways, from a psychological perspective, stopping the healing process, interrupting the healing process by not having resolution. This is what we call trauma reenactment, over and over, relationship after relationship. There's a teaching, I'm going to do a couple more things here. This is called The Habits of Mind, which is kind of what I'm talking about. This is a teaching by Mahaghosananda, who was considered the Gandhi of Cambodia. So just a little history. Mahaghosananda was a monk in Cambodia, and at the time of the Khmer Rouge, so late 70s, early 80s. And Khmer Rouge was this military faction that took over Cambodia and just tried to wipe out, exterminate their own people, mostly higher class, mostly educated. There was it was a huge war. So many people died, and it was infighting. The Killing Fields is a very good movie about that, and a book about this. What happened in Cambodia. Mahaghosananda fled to Thailand with there was a group of monks and other people that fled to Thailand, and then at the end of the Khmer Rouge occupation, came back into Thailand. Back into Cambodia, and his whole village decimated. Everyone in his village killed. His whole family killed. And he basically became the kind of peaceful ambassador of Cambodia. And he was very involved. And he would go around and he would talk to the survivors. And they were all they wanted to just kill all of anyone who was, in the military or part of the Khmer Rouge, and just keep the hatred going. And this is what he had to say at a speaking engagement where he was talking to a group of people who were talking about executing the ex-military people, who many of them were given a choice: join us or be killed with your family. And so they chose to survive. The thought manifests as word. The word manifests as deed. The deed develops into habit. Habit hardens into character. Character gives birth to destiny. So watch your thoughts with care and let it spring from love born out of respect for all beings. That's some deep metta, some deep loving kindness as a way to protect your own heart. Don't feed those kind of thoughts. Don't watch as it becomes. Many of you have probably experienced this, watched it, seen it happen. Our own habits of mind that feed upon themselves to create an identity that becomes our character. And we can shift that. We can incline our minds in a different direction. This is the beauty. This practice helps us to see these patterns and in time learn new ways to respond rather than react to a situation. Questions, thoughts, reflections? Please.
So I feel like you talk about, it talks a lot about making friends with our thoughts. Ignoring certain thoughts, or how do we change the thoughts? How do we change the neighborhood?
Great question. So it was kind of, how do we change our thoughts? How do we change the neighborhood? So the Buddha, and I believe Noah kind of talked about this last week. The Buddha, one of his first insights, once he was like concentrated and then able to really build mindfulness, he began to see. And actually, the Buddha didn't just like boom become enlightened. That's not the way it worked. There's 4 stages of the Buddha's enlightenment. And the first stage is he began to see, oh, when I follow these thoughts, they lead to negative results, papancha, negative karmic results, negative mental fabrications. So I'm going to not feed these thoughts. And I'm going to, have them be mindful and aware when they come up. And then it's an intervention of not now, not now, not now. Later it became, I see you, Mara, right? And then when I see these positive results, these kind of what are considered skillful mental fabrications, thoughts, and I feed them, such as loving kindness, such as forgiveness, such as compassion, such as the wellspring of, that kind of physical sense of, oh, like it's going to be okay. Have you experienced that? It took me a long time to experience that, by the way. The world was completely unsafe. You were all my enemy. Nothing was going my way ever. And that's just the way things were. I believed that. It took time, right, of this practice to begin to incline the mind in a different direction. So this is the Buddha saying is first you begin to kind of see, okay, not feeding those thoughts, not feeding those thoughts. And actually in some cases, in the Buddhist teaching, it's saying, stamp out those thoughts. No, I'm not going to feed you. Right? You guys have heard of the story of the 2 wolves? Yeah. Right. Feed the good wolf. Feed the qualities, that lead to positive outcomes. This is how we begin to do it. And part of it is, so this idea of meditate and destroy, right? Meditate and destroy means destroying or uprooting the greed, hatred, and delusion that plays itself out in this, what's happening about what's not actually happening in the stories that we're continually telling ourselves. So so it's a process, or you can get a lobotomy, right? Yes.
I can add to that and say, I feel like it's like anything else, it's a practice, and for me, sometimes I fall off of it and have to remind myself that, for me, I even have done silly things like say to myself, I'll have like negative thoughts that always kind of reoccur, and when those come up and I recognize it, I'll kind of like say, oh, hey, I recognize you and like that's bad information.
Mhm. Or outdated.
Yeah.
It's outdated information.
Or whatever.
Right.
And kind of you're dismissed.
Yep.
And let's
yep.
move on.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's helpful. It's been helpful. For me.
Thank you for sharing that. And the precepts are very helpful. I've been I've been teaching on Wednesday night. We've been going through the Eightfold Path, and I just kind of went through that. That's why the precepts are there. The precepts are to stop continuing to feed the negativity or to create the this kind of unhelpful, unskillful habits of mind. Of course, part of the precepts are to not anesthetize ourselves with drugs and alcohol, to not steal, to not kill, to be wise with sexuality. Goes a long way to changing the neighborhood. First you got to get the crack houses out. You got to get the crack dealers out, plant some flowers, right? Feed the homeless, give them houses. We'll end with this. This is I think it kind of addresses a little of what you're talking about. This is a poem by Kabir. Kabir, translated by Robert Bly. Kabir is a contemporary of, well, he's actually he's a contemporary of Rumi. So Rumi was like 13th century. He's like 18th, 19th century. And it says, oh mind you carry on your back. Your actions are like a heavy sack. No wonder that your shoulders ache. Another strains enough to break your neck. So drop that stupid load. This is the last stop on the road where you can find rest. Stay. Be love's guest. Oh, mind you carry on your back. Your actions are like a heavy sack. No wonder that your shoulders ache. Another strains enough to break your neck. Drop that stupid load. This is the last stop on the road where you can find rest. Stay. Be love's guest. And I just love that. New habits. But first we have to let go of the old habits. Okay. But it's not about perfection. It's about focusing and refocusing. It's about aiming, connecting, sustaining again and again. So my name is Jason Murphy. I normally teach here Wednesday nights in this room, 7:30 to 9. Thanks for having me. Thanks for being here. You also can follow me on Instagram, No BS Buddhist, or Jason Murphy. And if you want to, if you're on Zoom and you want to sign up for my Wednesday group, rebeldharma.com, that's the name of my group. So even though I teach here and I cover for Noah, sometimes I have my own meditation group called Rebel Dharma, rebeldharma.com, or you can just show up here Wednesday, 7:30 to 9.
You said Wednesdays?
Wednesdays, yep. Every Wednesday, 7:30 to 9 in this room.
Got it.
Oh, yeah. Or on Zoom. rebeldharma.com. We have to do it. It's like, 2022. Social media platforms. Any donation, there is no cost for the meditation or coming to this group. We don't charge at the door like many people do, because this is the economic structure of generosity, of paying it forward, right? And yet we have 2022 expenses, living in Venice, California, keeping the lights on, keeping the Wi-Fi. So $15, $20 donation is what's suggested. Of course, no one is kept away for lack of pay. We don't, like I said, we don't charge you at the door, but there is a bowl at the door, and there is a little QR code. And what's your name? Tara is also there if you'd like any. There's t-shirts and books, or if you want to run a card, right? Yeah, so great. Of course, any donation is tax deductible. This is a 501(c)(3) nonprofit religious organization. So, and you know, there's lots of things happening here at Against the Stream. And if you go to againstthestream.com, you can see all that's happening. And also, if you want to support me, you can Venmo me No BS Buddhist or Jason Murphy. Yeah, just to Venmo me directly. I don't take any payment for whatever goes into the bowl stays in the center. But if you want to show appreciation or generosity to me personally, you can do so at No BS Buddhist, Venmo, or Jason Murphy. I think I have a PayPal too, but I never check it. So I'm sure I'm on PayPal, but you basically just don't be donating it to PayPal. I'll get it eventually someday. Any goodness that's come from our time together, may this goodness be dedicated first to yourself, because you showed up. So just take that in. Oh, the goodness that derives from practice, from hearing the Dharma, from practicing meditation. And then in all directions, because we don't just do this for ourselves. We do this to create a positive change in the world. And we all be free from suffering. Thank you again for your time and attention.